you reached out to me, so the onus is on you for this conversation. What do you want to chat about?
Well, I just thought it was really cool that I saw you talked with a detransitioner the other day, and I thought it was
What was the gender dysphoria diagnosis like for you? What was that process like? Sure.
grandparents.
How do you feel about puberty blockers?
It's okay.
Would you consider yourself like in your brain? Are you just like 100% like cisgender woman? Is that just how you see yourself, how you view yourself, how you want to express yourself, how you identify? Mr. Wayne hasn't been on stream in a while. True. Do is it time to cue up the rift?
Hey,
Hi, what's up?
nothing, just hanging out. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great too.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Athena. I go by MotherGender on Twitter. I'm a detransitioner who medically transitioned from female to male as a minor, and I talk about it online.
What did you say medically transition?
Yeah, so I had surgeries and hormones.
When you say as a minor, can you give me like a timeline? Like what age, what surgery? Whatever you're comfortable with, of course.
Yeah, well, I'm unfortunately like chronically open about this stuff online. So as like a brief overview, I had my double mastectomy at 16,
Okay.
and I had hormone replacement therapy afterwards, and then at 17, I had facial masculinization surgery.
Gotcha. Is this, I've never thought about this before. Can you have if you have a mastectomy at 16, is
hmm
there a chance that you can like grow more boob as you finish puberty, or do they take out everything that will grow into more boob? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I had to end up getting breast reconstructive surgery
Mm-hmm.
because all the breast tissue that I have is gone. So I will never be able to like so some trans women can take estrogen and like their breast tissue can grow.
Mm-hmm.
I will never be able to do that.
Gotcha. I understand. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Well, you reached out to me, so the onus is on you for this conversation. What do you want to chat about?
Well, I just thought it was really cool that I saw you talked with a detransitioner the other day, and I thought it was great considering this is a very hot topic, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I just was wondering if I could share a little bit about my experience and some of the misconceptions with, I guess, minors transitioning,
Mm-hmm.
and answer any questions you or maybe chat have about it.
Yeah, I guess. Do you want to? When did you start? Where does it all start? Aside from your birth, when did you
Um,
like start feeling what you would consider dysphoric, or what was that early process like for you? Yeah.
yeah, so I came out at 15. I had met like these two, it sounds so like well, groomy, but it was. I met these two trans men that were 18 when I was 15,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that they had said about their bodies and how they felt really it made sense to me. I had a lot of uh, bad feelings around like having breasts. I had very large breasts in third grade, so I had a lot of the male attention that was really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt
Oof.
like,
I've heard that's a really common experience for girls that develop early. That you can get
yeah.
like a lot of very creepy, weird guys, like in their 20s and beyond, that will like hit on you as like a 12 or 13 or 14-year-old. It can happen. Yeah.
Oh, it was even earlier than that. Like I had the largest breasts of my third grade class, so like 8 or 9 years old,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ah,
and
jeez.
like male teacher attention, boys, like it just they would grab them. It was very uncomfortable and like traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
So when these trans men kind of said, oh, I don't like having breasts, I want to be a man, like they make me feel uncomfortable, that really made sense to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't realize at the time that it was not dysphoria per se. It was like I didn't know how to process the trauma and feelings I was having, so I directed it towards my breasts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I came out at 15 and then was referred to these, like a primary care provider that specialized in gender medicine
Mm-hmm.
and a psychologist, and it just took off from there, and I ended up having surgery within 5 months of getting a gender dysphoria diagnosis.
What was the gender dysphoria diagnosis like for you? What was that process like?
It was very strange. Like the clinical process doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they've changed it by now because this was in like 2015, 2016. But they gave me like a questionnaire to fill out that was like, do you like having breasts? Do you like having a vagina? Do you like having a period?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as like a moody teenage girl that has a lot of attention that she doesn't like, of course I'm going to say like, oh, I hate all of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of said I was the perfect candidate and just said, you know, these are the treatments that can help with gender dysphoria, and it took off.
Did you have were your parents pretty supportive of this, or?
Yeah, so my parents both worked, they're retired now, in the like medical field, so they really trusted the medical and mental health professionals.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad was a little bit more hesitant because he didn't want to have me rush into anything.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, they trusted like the professionals, and they said, hey, if you don't support your child, they could end up committing suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up going along with all this because they wanted me to live.
Yeah. This is a I'm not making any moral judgments or saying anything is good or bad or right or wrong or whatever, but this was something that came up in that Jesse Singal wrote a long article for The Atlantic that a lot of people really don't like, but I thought it was really good. But he mentioned that one of the interesting challenges for parents, and I guess for trans kids or non-trans kids alike, is that you're up against a really brutal wall when it comes to time. And on one end, it's like, do you want to take some time? Do you want to be cautious? Do you want to be considerate? And then on the other hand, it's like, if you wait, your child's going to fucking kill themselves and it's your fault and you're a horrible parent. So there's like a lot of stress on both sides of that. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people, when I talk about it on like my Twitter and stuff, like really hate my parents. And like, I get that from a certain perspective, but I think people forget that like when you have a kid, like let's say they had leukemia or something.
Wait, can you real quick? Can you explain that? You said a lot of people. I don't know if you have like a conservative following because you're a detransitioner, or if it's like an LGBT left following, or what.
It's very conservative, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So a lot of people hate that your parents even allowed it to happen, right?
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, you were abused." And I'm like, "My parents loved me, and you know they were trusting these people that you know are in the same field as them." Dude, I forget my train of thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. I cut you off. You said that I asked if your parents were supportive. You said that they were. I mentioned before about how like there's a lot of pressure because people might be suicidal, and you're up against a really hard wall for time.
Oh yeah. What I was gonna say is that what I think about it is like, let's say your kid was very sick and had like cancer or something, like leukemia, whatever, and you go to a doctor and they say, "Hey, this is the only treatment that's gonna save their life."
Yeah.
Would you say no?
Yeah, of course,
Like,
and
if
that's the
all
pressure,
these-
right? Yeah.
Yeah, if everything indicates that this is the treatment and this is what you should do, I would probably have said yes to. But in the end, I think that there is a huge problem with like laws being passed and stuff that are going to make it so that more and more minors can have these surgeries because there's going to be more people like me. But I also feel like I'm in a tough spot because I know that trans people exist, which a lot of my followers don't agree with. And I think that if you're an adult and you are ready to make those decisions, then you should, because, I mean, there's things I do as an adult that a lot of people wouldn't agree with. But I feel like when you're a kid, like me having my breasts removed, like I will never be able to breastfeed. I have to get my implants that I got for reconstructive surgery replaced every like 10 years. That's more major surgery. And it's just, I don't feel like it's a very good spot to put children in.
Sure. How do you feel about puberty blockers?
I used to be very supportive of them. But with recent findings from like Sweden, it's a lot of like scientists and people that are talking about these studies are actually lying about what they're finding. I'll have to, I think, Jesse, you talked to yesterday, or
Yeah, my subreddit went through that study as well. You're talking about the one related to the healthcare outcomes of children that I believe were put on puberty blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really concerns me because, I mean, obviously a lot of people look at me and they think, oh, you're just transphobic, but I do care about gender dysphoric people because, you know, I went through that. And I feel like it's really irresponsible to lie about these studies when it could possibly not even help these children.
Sure. It does seem to be the case that, like, avoiding negative puberties, if it's possible, I think should be really high on the priority list. Like, when you're talking about like these like facial feminization surgeries or facial masculization surgeries, like these are, I don't know how much yours was, but I've had 2 different people email me now telling me they cost $50,000 to do these surgeries. And then
Mine wasn't that expensive.
Your wasn't, okay. And then those were both for FFS, to be fair. I don't know if one was
Oh,
more
okay,
intense.
that's different than what I had.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And then also I think clavicle reduction surgery as well, or shaping or something. So it seems like there's a lot of cost that goes into quote unquote passing, and then also just depending on what your male puberty is like, it just fucks you up so hard as a trans woman.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I like the idea at least of puberty blockers, like giving you a little bit more time to figure out like what's going on. I don't know if you can truly ever figure that out as a as a teenager. It's so hard. I hate that the time barrier is like so brutal, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we get to a spot where we're not lying about what the puberty blockers are doing and they actually are effective, I wouldn't be against that.
Yeah. Yeah, there just
but
needs to
I
be more
think
good
that-
research, high quality research.
Yeah, and I think that it doesn't really do any favors for the trans community for these professionals to be lying, because I'm like, you're kind of making them look bad here.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you mean there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go for it. What else do you want to say?
Oh, well, I was going to talk about a little bit, because a lot of people don't actually know that like facial masculinization surgery is a thing. So I had silicone implants put like into my chin and jaw to accentuate my jawline to appear more masculine. And that was, I think, $4,500.
Okay.
Maybe 5,000. And my this is like kind of where I think insurance becomes really shitty, because my insurance providers were obviously telling my parents and myself that, you know, I needed these surgeries, I needed hormones or whatever, but last minute they refused to cover any of it.
Oh, damn. Both the people that emailed me were really lucky, or they said they were lucky that their insurance has covered it, but yeah.
Yeah, so we paid, I guess my parents, which always makes me so sad. So they paid $8,500 for my double mastectomy. And they wouldn't have done that otherwise, because obviously they were told this was life-saving treatment. And then they also paid for my facial masculinization surgery. And later, as I detransitioned, I had been fighting with my insurance from 19 till last month, actually, I'm almost 23, to get coverage for my breast reconstruction. And they had quoted me that even though my mastectomy was only maybe $8,500, they were expecting me to pay out of pocket upwards of $23,000 to get my breast reconstruction.
Gotcha.
And to me, that's ridiculous, because when I looked in the fine print, I realized that this denial also affects trans people, because they don't recover, or they usually don't cover any reversals, and that includes severe complications from transgender surgeries.
Gotcha.
So, like, let's say you get something done and then something goes wrong, well, you're kind of shit out of luck unless you have thousands of dollars. And I think that that's a huge issue.
How do you feel about the have you talked to like a lot of conservatives when it comes to like content creators or news people or whatever? I'm not sure like what your story is in terms of media engagement.
Honestly, I kind of just started spewing into the void of Twitter a year or two ago.
Okay.
And gained a little bit of a following. A lot of journalists and stuff that reach out to me are very conservative, and a lot of people want me to like testify in court for these very serious laws. But it kind of disappoints me, because I feel like I'm then shoved into the box of like very right-wing stuff.
One of the I agree. I think that's really shitty. One thing that seems really difficult is that I've read I don't know how much you follow my stuff, but I've been on a we've been talking about trans shit for like a fucking month now.
Yeah, I noticed a little bit.
Yeah. So I asked all my trans fans to like email me their experiences in their life and everything, because I don't know, right? So I have to read other people's experience to understand. And one thing that it feels like is sorely lacking is like there needs to be a safe space for people to like explore and question. And in the past, if it was related to gender identity, this place didn't exist, because if you're a trans, you're like a freak that's on like Jerry Springer or Maury or whatever. Like you're just like a total freak that everybody's making fun of. But nowadays, people have more space to explore, which is good, but it feels like it's only in one direction. And I guess that's a little worrisome. So like it feels like if you're in certain areas, I don't want to say, because it feels a little extreme to say like you're pushed into being trans, but I know that for older trans people, like I think Buck Angel, I think, has said this. Like, if you are like somebody that was a tomboy in the 90s, today might be pushed more into communities where you are, where you're seen more as like a to be like transgender person, where people are trying to like crack the egg and stuff. So it seems really hard to create like a forum where people can have like these honest like explorations of their own identity without either, you know, conservative people trying to push them towards, you know, non-traditional gender roles, or like very far left-leaning people pushing them towards like kind of, well, maybe you're trans, like let's think about it, you know, you're too cute to not be trans, right? I don't know, it seems really challenging to have like a good space for these like explorations. I just said the same thing like 30 times, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, I mean, one thing that really concerns me is my last therapist, we were talking about me talking about stuff online and the whole trans thing, and she confided in me that she actually had been talking about going in one direction, she had been fired by many clients for refusing to write a letter advocating for, or I guess recommending puberty blockers or hormones to 9-year-olds on day one. Mm-hmm. So these people are, I know that a lot of trans people can be very desperate for care, and I get that, but they're, not all of them, sorry, I don't want to generalize here, but a lot of people and parents specifically are like therapist shopping to find someone that will write that letter day one, without even exploring with the child if this is truly what they want and what would be best for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really concerning.
Yeah, and it feels hard to have like challenging conversations with therapists that aren't immediately written off as like transmedicalist gatekeeping, is how I usually see it. Like explain like, oh, like, so what, this person hasn't started fucking cutting themselves yet, so that's not enough for you? No, like that seems to be like the general trend that people act, which sucks, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really complicated because, you know, obviously I do believe trans people exist. I know that it can really suck to go through puberty, but also, you know, based on my own experience and having regretted everything, and it's ruined my life a lot. I think it's really irresponsible to just say like, oh, give everyone this, give everyone that, allow all this access, because I was 16 and really fucking stupid. Like, I didn't know what was best for me, and I ended up having my breasts removed, and now I permanently have facial hair that I have to shave, and my voice is deep, and I can't ever take that back.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there are some people that can know at like 14, 15, 16 that they're trans?
Yeah, but the trans people that I've spoken to that are like trans adults, and they know, they knew when they were younger, and they decided to wait to make sure, which I think can be easier for like female to male. I know it can be difficult because puberty for biological males does a lot. But I feel like if you can wait long enough to know really what you want, then like no one should stop you. You know, like you know who you are, you're an adult, your frontal lobes hopefully developed, and you have your own income, like you can do your own thing.
Something that this feels like the case. It feels like people that are trans, it seems like from, at the very least, at the onset of puberty, they absolutely know that they're trans. That's like they know it pretty well. But it feels like for people that have other problems, that think they're trans but they aren't actually trans, it might be easy to think that they're trans because maybe that's like the solution to issues that are going on. Because I seem to be getting from all of the emails that I've gotten, and it might be selection bias from my fan base, but it seems to be the case that I'm reading the same story over and over and over again for the trans people in my community. That like when I was young, you know, I kind of felt like a certain way, you know, maybe I kind of quasi-social trans, I wore dresses or whatever, you know, stuff like that. But when puberty started to set in, there were these like huge personal feelings of disgust with my body. For a lot of these people, they didn't even know what trans was. It took them until post-puberty, until reading about stuff or introducing themselves to people afterwards, and it was like, oh my God, now this all makes sense. So it feels like there is a trans experience that's felt like pretty early on, like 12, 13, 14, like whenever puberty starts. But if you're a person that isn't trans, but you think that that might be the solution to problems, it's harder to pick those people out, because how can you truly tell somebody, right? Because you don't really know what's going on in their head, you know?
Yeah, I also think that can overlap, like that disgust can really overlap. Specifically, I mean, I wasn't a male going through puberty like you were, but for me as like a woman, like going through puberty, I had such disgust for my body, and like getting my period was horrible, and I hated myself, and I feel like it's really hard to differentiate. Do you hate yourself because you're like actually a different gender, or do you hate yourself because wow, it sucks that you're growing up female and men just touch you all the time?
Sure, yeah. Like dysmorphia versus dysphoria, right? Like maybe you just don't like your body for one reason. One person that emailed me said that that was their early journey, is they hated their body and they went on like a hardcore like 2-year lifting arc, and by the end of that they fucking hated themselves even more, and it made their eventual transition even harder because they thought maybe if they just got stronger. Yeah. So yeah, that seems to be confusing as well, which was interesting to read. But I talked to one other woman that was would you consider yourself like, sorry, I have so many questions to this.
Okay.
Would you consider yourself like, in your brain, are you just like 100% like cisgender woman? Is that just how you see yourself, how you view yourself, how you want to express yourself, how you identify?
I guess, I mean, I feel like this is, I don't know if this is like a universal experience or just me because I have autism, but I've never felt like this is female and this is male. Like when people say I feel male or female, I'm like, what does that mean? Because I just feel like myself.
Sure.
Do
Do you ever feel like you've experienced or had experiences with dysphoria, like gender dysphoria?
Yes, and even more so now as a detransitioner, because I feel like I made this point on my Twitter and some people were very mad about it, but I feel like for detransitioned women, because I can't speak for detransitioned men, we have a very severe and different experience with gender dysphoria, because like let's say, you know, trans people don't feel like they're in the right body that represents their gender, but like we realize we are, but we've done all these changes and we will never get that back. So like it feels very unobtainable and it can be very devastating. So I've had a huge amount of dysphoria with that, especially surrounding my breasts. So it's even more so now, I guess, than before transitioning.
Gotcha. I spoke to one other lady that was FtMtF, detransitioner.
A lot of letters.
Yeah. And her experience, I'm saying this cautiously because she said that she hasn't explored like non-binary or anything like that, so she didn't think about it through that lens. But it sounded to me kind of interesting in that like she initially transitioned from female to male, and she had a mastectomy because she didn't really like her breasts. And then eventually it kind of, I hope I'm not phrasing something correctly, she said it seemed like she was never really going to get the results that she wanted going FTM, and she'd grown up a little bit and she'd become a little bit more comfortable with her body. So eventually she transitioned back to male. She stopped taking hormones. But ultimately, she was glad that she got rid of her breasts because she didn't really like that. She liked her body now more without breasts than before. When you're looking at like people that detransition, do you think that, is it in your experience, like what are these stories normally like? Or do they have some amount of dysphoria? They're glad they got some surgeries? Or most of them like, fuck, I wish I wouldn't have done anything at all? What are they just like unhappy with the transitioning process? Because I hear that like the first few months of transition, like the first like anywhere from 3 to 12 months are like the worst. Do some people just give up on transitioning and then they're like, oh fuck it, I'll go back and just, you know, suffer? Like, yeah, what is your experience with talking with detransitioning people?
From what I've gathered, we kind of go through these like phases where like when we first detransition, this is particularly true for me, I was really scared that the trans community was going to hate me. So I constantly was like, I don't regret anything. I am who I am. You know, I can live without breasts. I can do this. My voice is fine. But as I got older and was further away from like the trans community because they disowned me, I realized that I do regret it. But that's not to say that everyone that says they don't regret it will end up regretting it. But I've noticed that a lot with other detransitioners, that we kind of say, oh, we don't regret it. And then we realize, fuck, this is serious. This is permanent. We can't go back. And then we have like a breakdown.
Sure. If you're part of like, in general, this is a very general question. If you're part of like a trans like group, if you become a detransitioner, do you think you generally still have a place in those groups to exist, or are you kind of like excommunicated, like kicked out? Nobody wants to hear from you.
We're kicked out unless we only talk about transition in a positive way,
Uh-huh.
never say we regret it, and just constantly talk about how great trans people are,
Okay, gotcha.
which has been really disappointing for me because I that was my home for a long time, the trans community,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really sad to see. And not obviously not all trans people are like that,
Yeah.
but it was really sad to see people that I'd called my best friend for years to completely stop talking to me overnight because I was a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
It was really devastating for me.
Gotcha, gotcha. You're how old are you now, if you don't mind saying?
I'm 22.
22, gotcha. What do you what is your like ultimate goal? What do you hope to get out of talking about your experiences detransitioning?
I hope that in some way it can, I guess, open up more exploration with transitioning, so that the only path is not just medical transition right away. Because a lot of people that follow me are very conservative and they just want it completely abolished, like transition to be taken away completely. That's not realistic in the world we live in. So I just want to open up the conversation, have some people feel maybe less alone if they're trans and they might regret something, or just help some other people understand that it's okay to explore gender and you don't need to go having surgeries and hormones right away. But people take my sharing of it a very different way.
Do you ever do anything to like intentionally needle like your conservative audience, or do you try not to poke the bear, or
um
like when I go on like my big like trans stuff, like when I'm having these conversations, it can be, I can understand how some people looking in can be like, wait, this is a guy that like hates trans people. So every now and then I'll give like a big disclaimer, like, hey, just by the way, if you're watching me and you like say weird transphobic shit, like I ban you from everything, I hate you, like that's not what we do here. Like, do you ever feel like you have to give those disclaimers to your conservative community, or are you worried about creating like too many enemies at once, or?
yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously I can't like a lot of people like trans activists and stuff, when they see my stuff, they tell me you're weaponizing your experience. And it's like I can't control how other people interpret it, but what I can do and what I try to do is just not feed the far right sides or the very far left sides. I just try to share my experience for what it was and my opinions, and hope that, maybe this is naive of me, hope that people can take it as they will, like I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You just like you put it out there and see how people engage with it, right?
Yeah, because I can't control. I mean, people call me a liar. People tell me that I'm just killing trans people, and I'm like, okay, well, thank you. But there's also people that message me. They're like, thank you. I, was gonna get top surgery, and I realized that it wasn't for me, and I wouldn't have realized that without you, and that makes me happy. But I also don't want to like make people feel like me saying that I had a bad experience means that they will always have a bad experience.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I also don't have a huge following like you, so I'm sure you deal with much more.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to go over specifically, or?
Um, no, I think that's it. I just thought it was cool that you're kind of opening up your platform to this stuff. I know you get a lot of shit for it, so if you ever want to talk about it again or anything, let me know.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation. If anything comes up, feel free to let me know. But yeah.
Great, will do.
Cool. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.